When asked what his favorite track was in Part 5 of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Yugo Kanno, the composer for Parts 3 through 6, responded, "The main theme, without a doubt. I had already composed music for Parts 3 and 4 at this point, so it was the third time for me to create a main theme for JoJo. Every part was so different from the others. This time I went through a lot of trial and error to come up with the fitting one, and just for this reason, it became a song I'm very emotionally attached to. I have yet to see anybody really looking through this music, so today I just wanted to take a second and check out why it actually sounds as good as it does." After studying this piece in a lot closer detail, I've come to the realization that Kanno uses a few very key compositional processes when writing his music, and I think they'll become apparent as we go on, and they might even help you with your own writing. That being said, this video will be broken into 3 main parts. First, the way Kanno organizes every single melody throughout the piece, because there's a clear pattern to all of them that we'll talk about. Second, Kanno's rhythmic tendencies when writing his melodies. He has these tendencies all across the OST, and they're definitely intentional. And then third, the best part, for obvious reasons. One of Kanno's go-to motifs for these exciting driving lines during JoJo's iconic fight scenes is to have fast, super fast rhythms that are super syncopated underneath powerful melodies that are generally built on specifically traceo rhythms. You could even think about this as just Kanno's basic formula for writing this kind of music. And Giorno's theme is no exception. The backbone of this piece is formed by this iconic bass line that's doubled in the distorted guitar, just shredding over this B minor blues scale. This backbone is present for almost the entire piece. Even when the bass changes, the rhythm stays the same, except for in 2 parts, right before the best part and during the melody that the best part plays. Because of this, when the bass does drop out, it means we know that something crazy is about to happen. Jumping back to the beginning though, the first actual melody we hear played, besides this cool, unpitched rap part, is a doubling of the electric guitar and the tenor sax, playing a scale up a B minor from the root to the 5th, holding that 5th for 2 beats, and then going on to play a few leaps outlining a B minor 7 enclosure to this G sharp. This G sharp implies a harmony of a major 4 chord by being an accidental, and is later affirmed with actual harmony, but for the time being though, this bass is still playing the B blues riff, and the only way to assume any kind of harmony is via harmonic implication. This is where no chords are actually being played, but you can kind of get what the cadence of the piece is by just hearing the melody and understanding, oh yeah, this is where we're going. So take a look at this B minor 7 arpeggiation that I mentioned earlier. This chord is a great enclosure to this G sharp, since it would be the 3rd of the E major chord, and 4-3 is a really strong resolution, which is why you often see 5-1 cadences including the 7. Not only this, the enclosure of the B minor 7 to the E major works well because of the fact that it has that same 5-1 relationship. The next 2 beats can effectively be seen as 2 dotted 8ths that are perfectly spaced in such a way that the next dotted 8th would land right on beat 1. This is a super powerful rhythmic gesture to drive energy into beat 1, and dotted 8ths, or even just rhythms built on dotted 8th patterns, are kind of a super tool that Kanno uses a lot to create energy. Here's one of these tools I mentioned earlier might help you guys in your own writing. I'm going to split this 3-bar phrase into 2 parts. Let's just call them parts A and B. A is what I'm going to call a static motif, and B is what I'm going to call a dynamic motif. Notice how the next 4 bars of music are quite similar to the last 4, only the difference being part B lands on the same G sharp, but then this time takes that traceo rhythm that we were talking about, and instead of sitting on the note this time, like last time, it takes up the B minor scale. This is what I mean by a dynamic motif. Of course, you could also look at these 4 bars as the consequent phrase of the previous 4's antecedent. The next 8 bars are nearly identical, except this time the piano plays some comp chords just to reassure the harmony. Now we have a new second melody. The pickup to this melody starts with a scale just like the first one, only this time it goes down into the melody and plays the first traceo rhythm that we hear, except this time it outlines a full clave rhythm. A clave rhythm is a traditionally Afro-Cuban rhythm that starts with a traceo, usually noted in dotted quarters, and then includes a second measure of beats 2 and 4. Although it's normally notated like this, it can often be seen double this speed with dotted eighths and the and 4 at the end. One variation of this rhythm that Kanno uses a lot in his music, though, is a rhythm very similar to this, but the second to last note is moved back just a hair to the 16th note before. This has the super cool effect of having the first 5 dotted eighths in this rhythm be evenly spaced apart, which then results in the last 2 eighth notes in this rhythm feeling like they're kind of rushing into beat 1 of the next measure to compensate for all of the dotted eighths kind of anticipating the quarter note pulse. There's no official name for this rhythm, but it's been dubbed the double traceo, and like I said, Kanno uses this rhythm quite a lot. This phrase can be looked at, just like the last, as 2 large 4-measure chunks, each with an antecedent and consequent phrase on the inside. Also, just like the last section, in each of those we have a static A motif that doesn't change and a B motif that does. This is all true right up into the last 2 bars of the phrase when we get this awesome triplet-based saxophone run that outlines a D major and B major chord as well as a B Dorian outline in the last 2 beats. This is relevant because the G sharp in the natural 6 of the B Dorian sound is the same G sharp we saw earlier in the major 4 chord. And then we get this same dotted eighth based rhythm that we went over earlier. I'm pretty sure the placement of this is also no accident, as we discussed how this rhythm drives energy forward into the next measure. And the next measure could arguably be described as the most hype melody in all of anime music, the best part. For the sake of my impatience, as well as so that I don't have to repeat this material when it comes up in its most meme form, I'm going to skip ahead to this part, to its final form, if you will. Like I mentioned a bit ago, this is where the bass guitar drops out for the first time in the entire song up until this point, and for good reason. We get this super sick tremolo effect. I transcribed it as a snare drum, but the same sort of music theory should still apply. The tremolo on this audio effect, from what I can tell, is close to that of a 30-second note roll, and then 2/8 with the same 30-second roll, and then a triplet that turns into a 6-lit sort of vibe that pushes energy into beat 1, which lands right on this piano solo. And holy cow, this piano solo is awesome. The first time I listened to this, my brain immediately imploded, and I had to go figure out what was going on harmonically. Obviously, my brain doesn't do that anymore. When I listen to this, because of the sheer number of times that I've listened to this piece because of how much it was memed, but I guess at least now I know how the harmony works, and hopefully you will too in a couple minutes. So, basically what we got going on here is a 1-6-2-5 in B minor. If you don't know all that much about music theory, this might sound crazy to you. On the surface, it's nothing crazy to any normal jazz head. This is a progression that's used so much in especially older jazz, but some newer jazz too. A prime example of being Lullaby of Birdland. However, normally when you see this progression, you start with a normal 1 or 1 minor 7 chord and then drop just the bass down to a 6 to create a half diminished chord. And then you go into your normal 2-5-1 in minor using your half diminished 2 and your dominant 5. However, in this theme, we have a fully diminished 6 chord. This means that when you drop the bass down to the 6, the 5th of the chord also goes down to the flat 5, otherwise known as the blue note. You might know this. The rhythmic progression of this is also super interesting when you take a look. And I've never considered writing a melody like this. This is another one of those compositional processes that I was talking about that could be useful to you, that Kanno uses a lot. Basically what happened is, I think Kanno just took a traceo rhythm that we talked about earlier and took both of the forms, the dotted quarter-based one and the dotted eighth-based one, and then alternates between them every bar. And then just doing the same static A dynamic B motif structure that we talked about earlier, and then just repeating the phrase a few times while adding various instruments and upping octaves, and you're good. Now, what I think really sets this apart from other pieces that maybe Kanno wrote or anybody else would write is that I think other composers would use this, little blues scale approach where they just go around maybe going up and down the blues scale and then hitting notes where chords fit and calling it a day. However, this isn't at all what Kanno does. I want you to take a look at every time the F note is played, the blue note, and see if you notice anything strange. I'll give you about 5 seconds. You can pause the video if you want to predict what I'm about to say. It might be pretty obvious to some of you, but just try. Okay, so the Fs are important because they're the only melodic accidental. I know that's what makes it a blue note. I guess I didn't really need to say that. But number two, every time he plays an F, it doesn't create consonants at all with the chord trying to support it. I am positive this is intentional. Like I said, other composers might have just gone through and putting the F naturals where there's maybe like a G sharp diminished chord because there's an F and a G sharp diminished, or maybe in the B minor chord because you can kind of get away with like using it as like a passing tone, which is kind of what most people do when they solo and stuff. But Kanno intentionally does the opposite of this. It's played on a C sharp half diminished chord and an F sharp 7 chord. And if this doesn't do it for you, I don't know what will, because this is pretty wild stuff. Notice the E to F clash and the F to F sharp clash, respectively. This perfectly encapsulates the chaotic nature of JoJo's when paired with the rhythmic propulsion from the alternating trecio rhythms. And just to create more hype on top of this, this melody is the first and only time in the piece where the vocals are actually pitched and they're singing the freaking title of the show, JoJo. But could also be referring to the character the song is based on, like Giorno Theme. But anyways, the track then goes on to replay the intro pretty much the same for the outro, but with some cool alto sax improv doodling on top, and then ends on a super jazzy B minor 11 chord. Taking a step back, this piece fits Giorno Theme character perfectly, and it was really fun to look at it more in depth about how Kanno writes, and I hope it has helped you guys, maybe with your theory or with your writing process. I skipped over a couple really cool sections, including the solo section, as well as some really, really cool crunchy chords that follow that solo section. But I think I might save these for later videos where I talk more in depth about soloing and things like chordal harmony, so stick around for those. Or if you feel so inclined, maybe leave a comment for what anime I should cover next. I have so many plans for this channel, and I'm super excited to get the ball rolling and go through all different kinds of anime music here. If you want this transcription or early access to videos, or if you just want to support the channel, consider supporting me on Patreon. You can find that here. I hope you leave this video with more information about theory than you started with. And if you didn't, hopefully you understand that the main theme is a 1625 and you could brag about that to your friends. But anyways, thanks. I'll see you later.